talking about demos, the whole point of the demo is to get in and get out. You don't want to be messing around for 10 hours on something that's going to change in a week. And this is a cover, so it doesn't really matter that much. It was just for fun. That being said, when I do stuff like this, I use templates that I've created that mainly just have drum presets on them, because everything else basically changes. The guitar will change, the amp will change, maybe a different mic, all that changes. So I don't like to use presets for stuff that changes. But my drums are always the same, and they're usually always set up, and I rarely move the mics on them. So I can use presets because it's always going to be consistent. What I do is if you go into the library in Logic, I use Logic 10, you can pick whatever sound you want. They have a bunch of presets. So I'm using like the pop kick, the clean snare preset, the rock overheads, but I don't use exactly what they set up. I use that and then I tweak it to kind of fit what I'm looking for. And I did that a long time ago. I don't even remember what the actual preset is, but you can kind of see this wouldn't be the EQ that they would pull up. So that's different, but it kind of gets you close with like the compression. A lot of these settings are probably close, like the ratio is probably the same that it was. I don't know. But then you adjust threshold and all that. And I added a sub bass, and all the sends are mine, and doesn't really do sends. So that being said, I'll show you what my drums sound like with all this, and I can kind of break it down, but all these plugins, all EQ, compression, you're going to have to play with it really to get what you want. It's not going to sound like my drums if you copy all these settings, but here's the drums, and I'll kill the reverb and stuff that I put on, and I'll show you that afterwards. So here's the drums. Pretty raw, you can hear it. Here's the kick one, which is a microphone kind of in the porthole, just in like maybe 2 inches. The only reason I don't put it all the way in is because my stand is tall and I can't get it in there. I do, the second mic is all the way in there, but here's the outside kick. Here's my EQ. I'm adding a lot of sub frequencies, and I also have a sub bass on there, which adds a little bit more. I'm compressing it pretty heavy. Then this one, well, kick 1 gives me all that low end. Kick 2 gives me all my attack. And here I cut out all the mids, and I don't even boost the lows. Same exact ratio as the other kick. I'm just not pulling it down as hard. Snare top. This is kind of the frequency that I want. Adding that 5K range to add a lot of the high end, the snap. Only downside is you do get a lot of cymbal bleed. I have plugins to take that out, but since this was a demo, I wasn't really messing with it, and I put a limiter on it just to kind of crush it, make it loud, crush the hell out of it. Toms, all my toms are basically treated the same. Let's see if I can find a fill. Basic toms. All the EQs are pretty drastic. A lot of attack. I kill the mid on them because I don't really need it, and I add a little bit of low end. And these heads are really punchy as it is, so this really is exaggerated. But in the mix, you want that punch. You really can use everything, so I keep it in there. Hats. I wasn't recording hats on this track, so that's nothing. And my overheads. Just pan left and right, hard left, right. Here's my EQ. Take out lows. You can still kind of hear the kick. Take it out a little bit and boost high 6K is what I'm boosting. Get some more cymbal. That's without it. Just bring it out a little bit, and I boosted around 150 to get that snare coming through a little bit. Because a lot of the snare sound that you hear is from the overheads. Because if you listen to the snare by itself, it's all tone. There's not a lot of punch. A lot of the punch comes from here. A lot of people think that it's just this isolated snare mic doing all the work. It's really doing not much. It does a little bit, but overheads take care of a lot of that snare sound. I added a cowbell, which is me just holding a cowbell in front of a microphone. No processing. Just turn it up to blend. And that's that. And I copied it and put it where I wanted it. I just did one chorus. For bass, I record all the bass direct into my interface. And then I just copied it because I like these settings. But for presets, I used Logic presets again. So on the first bass, I used the modern stack preset. And then I adjust the clip distortion. Maybe I didn't. I don't know if it presets at 50. But that's where it's at. You can change the mix. I leave everything else. The mix on the clip distortion is the only thing I'll really change. And that's a really good attack, heavy, like kind of distorted bass sound. And then I had the fuzz drive, which is a little bit dirtier, and I think a little bit bassier too. It's tighter than the modern, but add those together. So that's that. I'll go back and show you the bus processing I do on these drums. So what I showed you before was just the raw drums with compression and EQ, and there's some gates and limiters. That's all that, but that's without all these sends that I'm using. So if we go down to my sends, I got parallel compression, New York compression. So I'll pull that in the verse, and you can kind of hear it kick in. So without it, kill it again. So it brings everything up in your face, adds a lot of attack. And that's really all it's used for. All that is a compressor slamming it, huge ratio, and then pull the threshold back so it slams it hard. If we listen to just that, it's pretty heavy. All right, now we got the New York compression. I have a small chamber. It's barely doing anything. It just thickens the snare a bit. That's all I use it for. And I have this one. Which I use to fatten the kick up a bit. A lot of people don't like reverb on kick. I like it. It adds a lot of, I don't know, rumble. I like the rumble. I have one more. It's like a really small room that I use to fatten the snare, and you can definitely hear that one in the mix when I get going. So let me I'll solo that with these, and you can hear the final drum sound that I use with all the you'll hear that snare reverb, and you'll hear how fat the kick sounds with all that reverb. So there you go. Reverb helps a lot. Now, when you're mixing the bass in, you heard how crunchy my bass was, and it's kind of low end heavy. You want to make sure it doesn't cover up your kick at all. Let me kill these. The way to get around that is just EQ. See this range? I'm at about 76 hertz. That's what I'm boosting to my kick. Just make sure your bass isn't boosting the same frequency, and it's not. So it shouldn't be a problem. But I also have this second mic, which adds all my attack. And you can hear that coming through over the bass, so it's not going to cover it up. There's no problem. That's one of the main problems you'll run into. But if you do it carefully and EQ right, it shouldn't be a problem. And it's not a big deal because we're not micing up a bass cab. So all this is really easy to change. You don't have to worry about EQing that much because it's just a straight bass signal, so it's really easy to work with. For guitar, I think we used a Les Paul into a Black Star, and I'm just using a 57, just kind of near the edge of the cone. Sounds pretty good. No processing at all. If you get a good tone going in, you don't really need to mess with it. And especially for demos like this, it's not a big deal. So just get a tone that you think will work, and then you'll probably not even have to touch it. Just change levels, and that's about it. So we double track the rhythm. Here's the left. You can see I panned it all the way. Right. Pan that all the way. Here's those together. Now I'll play that with my drums and bass. You just want to blend it. I'm not doing any compressing or anything. Distorted guitars are going to be compressed. You can see it. It's pretty flat. It's not like the DI where it's jumping all over the place. I'll mention the DI. I record with a DI out of habit. For demos, I won't really use it, but you could reamp with it. Or if you need to do editing, like slicing it up, moving stuff, it's really easy because you can see every transient. But on the actual guitar track that we recorded with a microphone, you can't really see every note that he hits. So it's an editing tool more than anything. I don't use it that much. We got some lead guitars for the choruses. It's a lead line, left, right, and then an octave of the same line. The octave is dead center, which is okay because we don't have any vocals going on. These are panned 40 left, 40 right, just so they don't take up the same space as the rhythm guitars. I'll show you just the guitars. No processing again. Same exact settings probably. I don't know if he tweaked it, but probably not. We just went for it, no big deal. And it sounds pretty good. I'll wait on the vocals and I'll show you this organ. The organ's really quiet throughout the whole mix. The only time you'll really hear it, unless you're listening hard, is at the beginning because it's pretty high register. I'll show you that in the mix. So you can hear it, but once it drops an octave, you won't really notice it, but it's there. That just kind of goes through the whole song doing whatever. And then we added a piano. The point of the piano, I mean, it's supposed to be heard, but you don't want it overpowering anything. You don't want it drawing attention away from the vocals. So it's there, but it's kind of like the organ, kind of in the background. And then we add a solo guitar right here. No processing, nothing. It's just raw guitar again. But we have vocals. This is in the middle of a verse. So I'll come back to that and kind of explain how I mix that. In terms of vocals, our signal chain was a SM58. And then I pumped that through a Pod HD Pro. And there's a preset on there that I use that has a tube compressor. Let me look. It has a preamp and a tube compressor on it. And we kind of crushed the hell out of it. And it's really mid-range. So I'll show you with all my stuff off. And this is what we got coming in.
Desire, she's my lava wire. Oh, desire, baby, taking me higher.
So this is really mid-range, which is cool. I mean, it fits for the song. So I added an EQ to kind of brighten it up, take some of the nasally sounds out. I'll show you what that is. So I took this out. I wasn't digging that, but then I boosted it to kind of make it bright.
Desire, she's my lava wire. Oh, desire, baby, taking me higher.
And then I compress it pretty hard. It's already compressed pretty hard, but why not?
Desire, she's my lava wire.
Really low ratio. You don't want to kill it, but I am bringing it back to like 10 dB.
Oh, desire, baby, taking me higher.
Really fast release, really fast attack. But I'm not boosting it all the way back up. I'm crushing it pretty hard. And then I add reverb.
Desire, she's my lava wire. Oh, desire, baby, taking me higher.
Kind of wanted a fake room sound, so I didn't use the space reverb for that, or the space designer. But that gave me a kind of cool room sound. And then I used the space designer as a longer, huge kind of hall sound. And I'll kill my reverb. I'll show you that.
Desire, she's my lava wire.
So it's a 2-second sustain, which is huge.
Oh, desire, baby, taking me higher.
And then with the reverb also.
Desire, she's my lava wire. Oh, desire, baby, taking me higher.
Now that sounds super wet and unusable almost, but in the mix, you won't hear really any of that Space Designer reverb, that long one. It'll kind of just make it blend with everything else. Since everything's so raw, I wanted a little bit of reverb going in, because there's no reverb on anything except drums, really. Maybe a little bit on the organ, but just like a tiny, tiny bit. Last thing would be that solo guitar that we were talking about. So it comes in halfway through this verse, but since there is singing going on, you don't want it taken away, just kind of like that piano. You don't want it taken away from what's going on. So you'll hear it, but here's my automation. It's down 3B from where it would be. Then when it comes back in, you bump it that 3B back, so it sounds like a solo. It's not in the background. That's about it. The only other thing we did was double some vocals, and it's the exact same settings, just the volume's a little lower. There are plugins to do that, but I like just doing it manually. I like have the guy sing it twice. Sounds good. That's about it. In terms of like volume mixing, all you want to do is kind of match volumes. So you get your drums, and however you want your drums, more kick, more snare, more cymbal, that's up to you. But this is how you can kind of hear my interpretation of it. So kick and snare are really present. You want cymbal, but not a lot. It seems like a lot by itself, but when there's vocals and guitar and all that, it's kind of buried a little bit. And then my toms aren't huge. They're not in your face, but you'll hear them. And then when you add the bass, just turn it up enough so it doesn't cover the kick, but you can still kind of, you'll hear the kick, but you'll also hear the bass. Like, that's all you want. You want to be able to hear everything. So that's all you gotta do. And then add the guitars, which are pretty low, but I'm not compressing them or anything. So all you gotta do is just bring them up. I've made it a little louder than the bass, which I normally wouldn't do. I'm usually really bass heavy, but just bring it up till you like how it sounds. Really, that's all there is to it. Make sure it doesn't cover up your drums or your bass. You can already hear how quiet the cymbals are sounding when that guitar comes in, but that's why I had them so loud to begin with. And you had that organ, which is way in the background, almost not even audible, but it's there. Then the vocals, you want the vocals to sit, but you don't want them to be so loud that, I don't know, that it sounds unnatural. You want them to just sit in there, and that's why I used a lot of reverb. They'll sit and blend really well, but I compress the hell out of it, so it's gonna stand through all this stuff that's going on. There's a lot going on. You want to be able to hear it, but you don't want to, I don't know, you don't want it too loud that it's kind of standing out, but you also don't want it so quiet that you can't hear all the little inflections that he does. She's my live wire. Oh, desire. Baby, taking me higher. The way I think of it is, if you can't hear what he's saying, then it's too quiet. Like, this is pretty quiet, but you can still hear that he's saying, she's my live wire. She's my live wire. So that's how I do that. Then the double, you just kind of bring the double in until it sounds good. Yeah. They're pretty close. The double's a little quieter. You don't want them both just ripping. You want one a little quieter, but it's only, what, like 1 dB. It's not a big deal. And then, since the chorus has no vocals and all it has is this lead guitar, I kind of treat it as a vocal because it's taking the spot. So make it just as loud as the vocal was, and it'll sound good. Pretty simple. All that stays the same until the piano comes in, and you'll be able to hear what I'm talking about with the piano being quiet. It doesn't take away from the vocal, but you can hear it. So yeah, and then the guitar comes in. It's there. It's a solo guitar, but it's not. We're not treating it as a solo guitar during the verse. We're kind of treating it like we were that piano, just hanging back. That's about it. It's just a demo. It shouldn't take you more than maybe like an hour, 2 hours tops. I think this took us probably around 2 hours because we didn't know the song before we did it. So you got to spend like a half hour learning it, figure out what you're going to do. I did the drums in like maybe 1 take, 2 takes tops. Bass, I sat there and I did the intro, and then I did, I think, the chorus, and then I just looped it for where I needed it because it's the same thing the whole time. Guitar, a few takes, this 1 take, and then I copied it 4 times. Vocals probably is the longest thing because you want to get the vocals right. I played the keys, but if I mess up, I don't go replay it. I just go in and fix it because it's MIDI. You can jump in there and change notes, and I think I quantized it so it's in time. Maybe not. No, I didn't. Well, you can if you need to. Same with the organ. I went and played the organ, and then I think I chopped it and put it where I wanted it. I didn't play the whole thing straight. I played like certain sections and copied and pasted. That's about it. I copied and pasted the cowbell. I just did 1 chorus, put it where I wanted it. That's it, guys.